Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here again. I thought to myself, I had to spare however long this is going to be, spare a bit of time. And I thought, you know what, there's probably enough in the Fabio Paratici stuff to actually have a little chat about it. Because once again, I dared have a day off. Wednesday and Sunday are normally my two kind of days off on a week that doesn't contain a Sunday match or a Wednesday match. And beautifully, this week, Spurs decided on the Sunday that Antonio Conte would go his separate ways from the club. And on Wednesday, we got the news that Fabio Paratici's ban was being extended worldwide. I thought, you know what? Why not? Why not? Especially as we've got no kind of real match to discuss right now, and it's the international break. I thought I'll have another little chat for anyone that is that bothered by listening to one or watching one, because I think the Pratici stuff it's really key. It's a really, really important kind of factor. It has. It's like if you can imagine a spider web. It's almost like the main structural bit in the middle that really is integral to everything else. Is that right? I don't know. I'm not really an expert on spider webs, but I'm presuming if you take away the middle, it's quite important. Because I was thinking about it, and there's been lots of mistakes that Daniel Levy and the board and everything have made over the years. Especially managerial wise, missteps, mishaps. What was it? Whatever I said, 12 sackings in 22. Well, technically Conte wasn't a sacking. I keep saying 12. I probably shouldn't, because it was a mutual agreement, of course. But I just wonder whether the appointment of Fabio Paratici, the man who really sits closest to Daniel Levy's throne, if we're going to call it could be the one that kind of weighs heaviest around Daniel Levy's neck, probably maybe more so than any of the managers in recent times, because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Fabio Paratici and the kind of the whys, especially the why. I was going to go for all the W's, but really it's the why, really, when you drill down into it, especially with what we know now and what some people knew then. Just just for a moment, think about Tottenham Hotspur. I'm sure you do, or try not to, but I'm sure you do. So Tottenham Hotspur right now are a club without a permanent men's first team head coach. They're a club without a permanent women's first team head coach, and they're now technically. Shouldn't laugh, but my goodness, they are without a managing director of football that is not allowed to manage or direct football. Says it all, really. I mean, so if you're unaware, what's just happened? So Fabio Paratici got a 30 month ban from all football related activities in Italy by the Italian Football Federation. The understanding that most of us had was that if the appeal against that failed on April the 19th, that FIFA, UEFA would be told, or, they were already asked to extend it, and at that point they would go, yeah, it's probably fair enough. But what's actually happened is FIFA just decided, yeah, come on, let's spread it out there right now. And that's exactly what's happened. On Wednesday, this statement came through to the media, which is, I think this is the bit that Spurs are a bit annoyed about, is that it came to the media and the FIFA statement said, FIFA can confirm that following a request by the Italian FA, the FIGC, the chairperson of FIFA Disciplinary Committee has decided to extend the sanctions imposed by the FIGC on several football officials to have worldwide effect. So that's big. Whereas before, Paratici essentially just couldn't do stuff in Italy, which I think is a major hampering anyway to what he does, because he does a lot of stuff through Italy. I mean, his headquarters, his office that he has when he's in Italy sits in Turin, and he does a lot of work out of there. So Spurs decided to respond. Everyone was kind of waiting for a response. It took a lot of the day because I think there was a lot of legal discussions going on. And this was a statement that came on Wednesday night. Following media reports today regarding the FIFA Disciplinary Committee decision to extend worldwide the sanction imposed by the FIGC Federal Court of Appeals on Fabio Paratici on 20th of January 2023, the club made urgent inquiries to FIFA. FIFA has late this afternoon responding to us in writing, notifying us today, Wednesday 29th March 2023, that a decision has been made by the FIFA Disciplinary Committee to extend the FIGC sanction worldwide. This committee deliberation has been taken with no advance notice to any of the parties involved. We are urgently seeking further clarification from FIFA as to the details of the extension and its variance from the FIGC sanction. We should like to make clear that when Fabio conducted the interview on club channels yesterday, neither he nor the club had any indication of this decision being made by FIFA, based on the fact the FIGC sanction was taken on 20th of January 2023 and remains subject to an appeal on 19th of April 2023. We shall update on this matter in due course. So, part 2 to this chaos is, if you're not aware, on Tuesday night, for some unknown reason, I have no idea how anyone could decide that this was a good thing to sign off. Spurs decided, let's have a little video, like a Google Hangout chat, whatever it is, Zoom meeting chat with Fabio. Let's talk about Conte going. Yeah, let's chat about the chaos. Let's let Fabio do it. That seems like a great idea. So we ended up with this very grainy, like work meeting style, during pandemic kind of style, Google Hangout video of Paratici talking about Spurs and Conte in I'll be honest, very uninspiring terms. I don't think the intention was to get the crowd and the fans whipped up into a frenzy of excitement about the last 10 games of the season. It didn't work. I think every single person that I've spoken to in and around the club and certainly outside the club, people were just like, what? Why did you pick Fabio Paratici with everything that's going on around him right now to be your public face of the club? It was mind-boggling. I saw it, and this is like, I don't know, and the Spurs have kind of, their statements all like, well, we wouldn't have done it if we'd known that was coming. Everything else has already happened. The man already had a decision in Italy banning him for 30 months. That may get overturned, but right now, that is something that has been charged against him, and he has been handed a ban. And obviously there's all the other noise as well. So if you're not aware exactly what's happened, so you've got that. So that Italian Football Federation investigation was into Juventus. Paratici was handed the longest ban out of all of those 11 former and current Juventus executives, which presumably, I think I remember reading this, was because they felt that he was mostly to blame. The person that they felt mostly to blame would obviously logically get the longest ban. Should state, absolutely, he and all the other executives accused deny any wrongdoing whatsoever, and of course they will have this appeal that will be heard on April the 19th, and we'll see whether that's overturned or not. There is also an Italian court case, which is part of the Prima investigation going on by, I think it's the Turin Prosecutor's Office. Yes, it is. I've written that in my notes down here. So the Serie A club were accused of false accounting, market manipulation, and false corporate disclosures. A preliminary hearing into that case was postponed in Turin on Monday, and that will now be rescheduled till May the 10th currently. So that's two things that are currently going on. On top of that, UEFA also revealed in December that the club financial control body's first chamber had opened an investigation into Juventus, these little quote marks, on the alleged financial violations that were recently made public as a result of the proceedings led by the Italian Companies and Exchange Commission and the public prosecutor in Turin. So, So that's all of that. Look, there's other stuff out there. Reports in Italy about, excuse me, I'm so shocked my throat has decided to swallow a piece of dust. There's further reports in Italy about that investigation also potentially looking at discrepancies with salaries, things like that. That's very much reports in Italy. Whether that comes to pass, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is there's enough noise around Fabio Paratici right now that no one in their right mind would throw him in front of a Zoom meeting camera and say, "Quick, Fabio, talk about Tottenham." It's just this club, honestly. It's just like, okay, what is the worst PR thing we could possibly do today? I've got it. Let's put a man who's been banned from football for 30 months and there's other stuff potentially hanging over his head right now, and let's get him talking about the club. Let's make him our public face. Look, at the end of the day, all of this could go away, and it may that it was all entirely wrong, and Fabio Paratici may have appeals overturned. He may not be found guilty of anything. However, right now, you just don't do it. You just don't. It's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And honestly, I've spoken to so many different people about it. Like I say, I've spoken to people within the club, spoken to people around the club, spoken to people who have worked at the club at different points. I've spoken to people that are like experts in communications and public relations. Everyone is just like, what? But yet Spurs come out with a statement as if to say, no one told us this was going to happen. Everyone has been reporting about everything going on with Fabio Paratici. Yes, I don't think from people that have dealt with FIFA, from what I understand, their communication is sometimes not the best. But I'm sorry, to just do the old standard pointing fingers at everyone is just classic Tottenham. It's to blame is to do. That should be the Tottenham motto. It's always someone else's fault, seemingly. Just either don't make the daft decisions in the first place, or at least have some culpability and own up to the silly things that happen at times. It's just mad, honestly. And it's the whole Paratici thing is strange, because obviously when you look at Juventus, a lot of the same executives who were handing bans, maybe all of them, I don't know, resigned from Juventus. Whereas only at Tottenham, with the man who's got the longest ban is absolutely still intrinsic to everything that's happening at Tottenham. It's so strange. Again, I must stress a million times, he may end up getting cleared of all of this. But it's just so strange. Why is everything so different at Tottenham? Why is it done in such a weird, different way? But yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy. Because, I mean, I've told you this before. Even in the days after the ban was announced, he was still, Paratici, very heavily involved in all discussions January transfer window related. So I know of people connected with players and agents that were going into meetings with the club, going in the door, going into the room and being like, "Oh, Fabio, oh, hello." And then, he was leading the discussions, not even just sitting there in the background. He was leading them still. There was absolutely a business as normal attitude. And that's kind of what it feels like this has always been with Spurs. I could be doing them a tremendous disservice, but publicly, nothing has been said about Fabio Paratici until this statement. And that was because there was no other alternative. The man has been banned from all football-related activities across the world. They kind of had to say something, but yet still didn't. It wasn't like, oh, this is a bit pants. It was like, hey, why don't you tell us? It's so mind-boggling. It's just mad. And you look back to the start and you can't help but wonder, because he was hired by Spurs in June 2021. But from what I can understand, from everything that seems to have been out there, the investigations into what's happening in Juventus were begun about 4 months before, maybe 5 months before. And that, from what I can tell, that was out there. Or certainly, if you are doing due diligence over hiring someone, especially, we're not even talking about a manager now. We're talking about someone that really has a lot of the power at Tottenham Hotspur, and has taken a lot of the control from Daniel Levy and delegated towards him. You're going to do due diligence to the absolute eyeball, surely. So either they really were completely unaware of anything going on in terms of any potential investigations into things at Juventus, or they just absolutely buried their head in the sand and it was just like, it's all going to blow over. Eventually it'll be fine. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure where their thinking was at. So I'm going to take you back to that summer of 2021. So Paratici was a free agent. He was some of the Italian stuff at the time said that he didn't have his contract renewed by Juventus. Either way, parted ways with them in the May after about 11 years at the club. You probably remember me saying at the time, Daniel Levy, he was someone, Paratici, that Levy had kind of had his eye on for quite a while. He'd always liked him, and I think maybe he said that. I think he actually maybe said that in the statement when Paratici joined. I can't remember. But either way, I knew that anyway, that he was someone that he'd looked at for a long time. But even then, he was just suddenly brought in. And from what I understand, and I think I'm very sure I said this at the time, I remember writing it, so Steve Hitchin, who was the technical performance director, who was essentially the sporting director, had kind of amalgamated his duties into that role. Certainly was a friend of Fabio Paratici's. He had no idea, from what I understand, what people have told me, that Paratici was coming in. It was just like, so Sully, this guy is coming in that is going to not only do the bulk of my main tasks, but is also going to be above me. It was just suddenly, all right, okay, that's happening. This is not new for Tottenham. This is absolutely not new for Tottenham. Those of us who have suffered across the years will remember very clearly 2007, when in August that year, officials from Spurs were photographed in a Spanish hotel. Just happened to be talking, or certainly in the very same vicinity, as Juan de Ramos, the Sevilla manager. This was while Martin Jol was in charge of Tottenham. At the time, Spurs vehemently denied anything going on. There was no meeting, no offering of any job to anyone. Unfortunately for them, Ramos, in his press conference later that week, admitted that Spurs had made him an excellent, dizzying offer. 2 months later, and we had that absolutely rubbish night when poor old Martin Jol was completely unaware that he was being sacked. And the crowd found out at half-time, sang his name, and lo and behold, he left afterwards. Who came through the door not long after? Juan de Ramos. So yes, Tottenham do have previous in this. They have previous of, and this is with many different kind of appointments, of suddenly things happening and people finding out about them at the last minute or having no say in them whatsoever. Yeah, it's just interesting, just seeing, literally flashing up on all my messages that Ramon Planes has left Getafe, is their director of football. Who knows whether that could end up being coincidental timing at some point. I know Spurs have been linked with him in the past. I think he's actually mates with Pochettino. If you want to add that into your conspiracy theory, I'm pretty sure he is. I think I saw him in a recent Instagram photo actually. Poch put up. Was it, or was it maybe his birthday one earlier in the year? I can't remember. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that they know each other quite well. Massively chucking out some speculation there. So Spurs have this history of being able to do this. But to be fair, as soon as Paratici came in, he really did kind of make some big waves He really made his presence felt. He started really ripping up and restructuring the club. He was quite, how do I put this? I think he'd been used to a certain level of things, the way things should be done at Juventus. So when he arrived at Spurs, he was like, no, this is not what I require right now. So, so he set about, he and Hitchin actually. Hitchin did stick around, I think, to help the transition. And he was there till February, I think, 2022, Hitchin. And between them, the two of them led a massive internal review of within the club. That was all the football-related departments, including, I've written them down here somewhere, recruitment, medical, sports science, and even the players' restaurant as well. You know, you know all the stuff about Conte coming in and ketchup and mayo, all this sort of stuff, but actually the canteen had already been kind of overhauled quite a bit from what I understand. There were some positive aspects to the review process and what happened. Certain budgets were raised and approved by Levy, which is a good thing, obviously, especially in scouting. That was an area that got a big increase in its budget, just so it was kind of more on a level with the likes of Juventus and these kind of big clubs as Spurs hope to be. The other downside, unfortunately, to the structure is it produced quite a cluttered structure, which we'll talk about in a little bit, with everyone stepping on each other's toes and remits and everything. So a little sense of Paratici as a person, if you're not aware. From everyone I've spoken to about him, they say his skills lie more in the transfer market. He's seen, to be fair, as one of the best in the world when it comes to trading players in that way. His strength is dealing with kind of boardroom figures and communicating with the various hierarchies of clubs, including his own, and pushing through very much what he wants to happen. And you know, those I've spoken to within Spurs have actually said that, yeah, it's quite interesting that he's a bit of a rarity at Spurs, Paratici, in that Daniel Levy clearly likes him, but actually, and people have said that they don't really see Levy like this very much with many people. They say with Paratici, there's a sense that he's maybe ever so slightly intimidated by him because of his experience, his football knowledge, and because of that, from what I'm told, Paratici really had no qualms in telling Daniel Levy when he felt he was wrong, and when he felt that, you know, he should just leave a certain decision to him because it was a more football decision and it was something that Levy didn't have the expertise to deal with. Which, you know, let's be honest, Daniel Levy is a guy, you know, he won't have heard that being said to him many times. This is a guy that keeps a tight, vice-like grip on Tottenham Hotspur. He's a guy that, you know, micromanages everything. You know, we've seen it, especially with the stadium. You know, speaking to people involved with the stadium construction, I know that everything, like down to like doorknobs and things like that, Levy was micromanaging. So you can imagine on the football side of things, this was a big thing to step away and leave most of the control to this man. But I guess if you've wanted him to come in for a fair few years, and you've got to hand over stuff. So this really was probably the most control that Levy's ever handed over to anyone at Tottenham. And, you know, I think Paratici, with that power, he certainly made an impression on people. Mostly, I'd probably say mostly good. He's, you know, very much, from what I understand with people that have spoken to him and deal with him quite a lot, he's very personable. He's got quite a fun kind of humorous side to him as well. From what I understand from quite a few people, the workaholic nature of him means that his timekeeping for meetings isn't the greatest. I've been told by a few agents and various kind of people involved in players that there's many an occasion where they found themselves kind of sitting out in a waiting area, essentially, with lots of other people all waiting for their turn with Paratici, various characters. But yeah, honestly, most people speak of him being very likeable, easy to deal with, accommodating. But that's not to say that, a bit like his, you know, fellow Italian Antonio Conte, he can be emotional and volatile as well, behind the scenes, but also in the public arena as well. I've witnessed that a fair few times of him. He's a very, very angry man during matches. Very much, one that likes to berate the officials. Kind of classic Italian. It's very much a stereotype. But, you always see him kind of doing all of this and getting very angry. And he was like that. Galini, I think, used to sit next to him quite a lot when he used to sit behind the dugout, Paratici, and got it in the ear the whole time. He was just moaning about stuff. But I've certainly seen, I remember a match at St James's Park, watching Paratici and Hitchen used to sit, like I say, that they are or were, I don't know if they still are, I presume they are, were friends, and they used to sit next to each other a lot, and it was Galini who got it after Hitchen went in the ear. But at St James's Park, I saw them both absolutely going for the official. They were just off to the left of the dugout, actually closer to the press box. And some of the Newcastle fans really took umbrage at some of the stuff they were saying. And that developed a big old thing, really, where the stewards were called in to ask for him to be removed. And that became a big thing as well because he was club staff. And from what I understand, there also something similar happened, mainly just with Paratici this time at Stamford Bridge. I'm trying to remember. I must have been there. But apparently he actually got threatened, I think, by some of the Chelsea fans as well. So, yeah, he is an emotional, volatile chap, just like Conte can be. It's quite weird that now you can't even say that all Italians are like that, because obviously that's a massive stereotype, but also because Christian Stellini is obviously now in charge. And from everything I understand, and obviously having dealt with him as well, he's probably the calmest, most collected, thoughtful individual you could probably find. So yeah, it's going to be the absolute polar opposite to both Conte and Paratici. So yeah, as I said earlier, Paratici's kind of main expertise lies in the boardroom and the dealing and the transfer market and stuff like that. So when it comes to actual running of a football club, he very much, what he does is he collects various people with expertise, puts them in roles underneath him, and they sort all of that out and they report back to him. So obviously, you'll remember, after Hitchen's exit, we had Greta Steinson was brought in, former Everton guy, as performance director. Andy Scolding brought in from Rangers as head of football strategy. There's so many titles, I want to get these right. And then the ex-Man City Academy coach, who'd also worked at Anderlecht with Vincent Kompany, Simon Davies, came in as head of coaching methodology. That's not to be confused with the Welshman Simon Davies who used to play for Spurs. This is a different Simon Davies. Maybe he played for Wales as well. I'm trying to remember. It feels like ages ago since I last wrote about him. So they, especially the latter two, would work with Dean Rastrick, the academy manager at Spurs, who I saw some reports that he left. From my understanding, very much still at Spurs. Quite surprised by those reports. And from people that know him told me that he has no intention of leaving the club unless one day they want to get rid of him. He's been there for years. I think certainly since the Redknapp years, I think, in some capacity. And he is, he really has, people complain about that. It's an easy kind of, who have they produced? But if you look over the years at the amount of people that Spurs have brought through to the first team, there's a lot. And Dean Rastrick has played his part in that, which, must have been a special moment to see Skippy score that goal against Chelsea as well. I think, from what I understand, Chelsea were one that kind of have tried to get Skippy over the years as well. So probably doubly special to see him score that goal as well. Sorry, I was just seeing some Richarlison quotes have come out. What's that? Just some little quotes in the middle of it, just about Conte's exit. Independent running them. Apparently someone... Oh, yeah, there was the stuff, wasn't there, the other day about Argentinian broadcaster had said that Romero and Richarlison were both about to ask to leave if Conte didn't go. So Richarlison apparently has responded to that saying... Oh, he said it on Twitter. Oh, right, okay. So he said, questioning and criticising me as a player for my performance is part of football, and I got it. However, telling lies about me I don't accept. I've always had a lot of respect for Conte and for all my coaches. He helped me a lot in my coming to Spurs, and whenever we had a problem, even if it was public, we solved it based on conversation and professionalism, and this he can confirm. I wasn't a mutiny leader against him. It was quite the opposite. I'm sorry I didn't deliver as much as he expected of me, and I didn't do enough for him to stay. When he left, I sent him a message thanking him for everything and wishing him the best because that's what he deserves. On the other hand, the journalist responsible for this awful lie did not even do the least, which would be talking to my PR or listening to me. Bad professional and bad character, and shame on you. Crikey, that is strong stuff. That is strong stuff. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever have a. I'm trying to think if I've written anything and had a player directly come out and have a pop at me. I don't think so. I had a couple of players block me over the years. A couple of youth players at Spurs when you just write about their performance in a match, which doesn't bode well for them as a first team player. But yeah, no, I've had a couple who went on to make first team appearances. Actually, I think definitely one unblocked me later. One I may still be blocked by. There's a little one for you to figure out. But both instances, I was very surprised because I'd actually massively praised these players as well, pretty much throughout their entire career at Spurs, and pushed them to and kind of really did a lot of stuff on how they should get a chance. So I do think sometimes on social media that there's a little bit of a wariness, I guess, of journalists seeing things. So especially on something like, let's say, Instagram. I think one of them was I was blocked on Twitter, and one I was blocked on Instagram. And yeah, maybe especially on Instagram, there's a worry of if I put something up, will that be seen by a journalist or something? I don't know. But yeah, part of the job. So it's absolutely fine. But there you go. Richarlison quote's very interesting. Little bit of sorry, that absolutely interrupted the flow of where we were going. But hey, if I got the chance to add something even newer into this, because Spurs and everyone does like to decide, oh, he's now published a story, let's whack something new out there. Where were we? Oh yeah, I was talking about Dean Rastrick. What else has Paratici brought in? Various other roles. New chief scout Leonardo Gabbanini. He came in from Watford. There's other new roles as well. As part of this internal review, there was emerging talent unit as well. But the problem with that and some of the other ones is lots of crossing over of people's remits. It was such a busy structure that you ended up kind of people doing similar things, and I think that's pretty much why you saw the emerging talent manager Chris Perkins headed off. He left the club and then went to Arsenal. He was only at the club for about a year after. I think he was at Everton as well. He certainly was at Derby. I remember that. As like he was quite highly rated because of the amount of academy players that came into the Derby Academy and then ended up playing for the first team. So yeah, he headed off. I think Gabbanini has got a lot of youth team kind of responsibility as well, which obviously does make an emerging talent manager a bit redundant, I guess. Yeah, Paratici's dealing with the whole youth setup has been a bit of a mixed bag. It's quite funny because I remember saying this on a podcast way back that in his first 6 months to a year, he wasn't really that involved, Paratici. Not many people saw him, involved with the youth setup. Not many people ever really saw him at youth matches or anything like that. He was very much focused on the first team. I'd say once Spurs got involved in, it's maybe a coincidence, but once they got involved in UEFA Youth League, which is like the youth version of the Champions League, Paratici would wander across from his office in Hotspur Way to watch the home games. It may well be that, it's because there's always at those games there's various agents of players and family of players, and maybe it was a good kind of networking thing. I'd often see him at those. You could look down and see him like talking to the coaches, like Yaya Toure would be there, Jermaine Defoe as well. I saw it one other recent time. I don't know, but yeah, it's. I don't want to go as far to say, oh, he doesn't care about youth or anything, because he has led a lot of these changes that have been made in the youth stuff, and he's put an emphasis also into bringing in bringing in young players at that next age group, the over 18 group, to supplement what Spurs have. I guess it's more similar to maybe the way Chelsea operate as well, not being worried about buying in players that maybe are going to be not going to be or considering their future at other clubs, stuff like that as well. And from what I understand, I think there is going to be part of this model is also going to be looking at bringing in players over 18 from other countries and bringing them into the academy as well, which is definitely something we've seen at Chelsea over the years, and other clubs as well. So Spurs, you've seen these purchases they've made. So Will Lancashire came in from Sheffield United for reportedly £2 million, or will be worth £2 million. Judson at Bell, I know it was a free transfer, but that was quite a kind of a big signing mid-season for the academy as well. And from what I understand, another forward, very young one though, 16-year-old Herbie James, is set to come across from Man City this summer as well. So they are making these signings, and from what I understand, Paratici has also increased, whatever you want to call it, the wage structure within the academy, which is something I'm told that John McDermott, the former academy head, was very reticent to do. He wanted to make sure that these youth players, that they only had the hungry ones, the ones that really were in it for the right motivation rather than the money. It does mean that you're going to lose some to other clubs where they pay the youngsters more, but ultimately it did mean that the ones you had there were very much there for the club and hungry. But yeah, Paratici's come in and he's raised those levels, which is why you're seeing kind of new additions, I guess, come in as well. It's been difficult for the development squad and the academy as well, especially because you've had the Conte era, and look, you and I know Conte. He's not a man for the young players. He's just not. He very much, I've said this before, he would nab them out of just ahead of like late notice from their own youth coaching sessions, because what he would do, and sometimes on the morning of youth matches, because what he would do, he'd like to do an 11 versus 11, but he would have a static 11 as the opposition, because he wanted to run the drills for his players. So you'd have youth players there, pretty much going there just to kind of stand there and listen, I guess soak up the tactical stuff about it, but really not contributing much to their development whatsoever. Probably been too harsh on Conte saying he doesn't believe in youth at all. I don't think that's true, but I do think he requires the young player to be at a similar level to the experienced senior pro he'd want, which we know in reality is not really something that happens. But yeah, I was always told that, like, over the last 16 months, that Conte's belief is that the academy should develop young players to be at the age ready for the first team. They should be ready to go, which I understand that logic, but there's other coaches that believe that an important part of the process is also blooding these youngsters and getting them experience, and also working with them yourselves to develop them. Whereas I think Conte maybe more wanted ready-made young players, which is strange because people speak about him, say that he's a very good coach and improving players and stuff. So, yeah, I don't really understand that. But, hey, that's what it was. So, yeah, it's been an awkward time for the academy. Paratici very much focused mainly on senior kind of affairs. And it's sad, but kind of speaking, I have kind of a lot of involvement with people involved in the academy. I've always tried to get to, especially Premier League 2 matches whenever I can, when the kind of schedule allows it. And the sense I get from almost everyone is that the divide right now between the academy at the club and the first team has just never been bigger. It's really sad, especially when you've got, Harry Kane, an academy product, becoming the record all-time scorer for Tottenham and England. And you've got Skippy now in the team, scoring against Chelsea in a massive derby match and everything. But yeah, from everything I understand, there's just this real disconnect between the two, which is so sad because in the past, that hasn't been the case. We know with Pochettino, we know he was very keen on involving young players, but also, to be fair to him, Mourinho as well. Mourinho will often get flack about maybe not kind of taking an interest in young players, but from everything I'm told, he really did. He would always be talking to the academy about, okay, so who are the young players? Who's the next in line? Who can I use? Who can bring into training? And to be fair to him, gave quite a few debuts, Mourinho, to young players. But just unfortunately, under Conte, just wasn't quite that same connection. I'm intrigued to see with Stellini and especially Mason having been part of the academy setup. Spurs have got a lot of injuries. I think they're going to have to dip into the academy. So I'll be intrigued to see what comes of that and whether there's any change when it comes to that. So yeah, back to the first team. We're talking about Paratici. He's, you could probably say he's been quite mixed with what he's done with the first team as well, especially managers. You remember me saying back in 2021 when he arrived, he came in, there was already a kind of a list of candidates for the managerial role that Hitchin had been drawn up for Levy. Paratici came in and went, no, and switched to his list of shortlist, which were very, very different candidates. Very much went away from that Levy statement that we remember very well and keep bringing up of, having, attacking, entertaining football, something like that. It's been so long now. Very much different kinds of managers. Levy led an effort to try and get Conte first, which, like I say, collapsed in those talks. You think he might have known there? They might have been a not quite the right fit. Others on Paratici's list we know were Gattuso, Lopetegui, and Nuno. How could I forget Nuno? Paulo Fonseca, fun enough, was the one name that was on the pre-Paratici list and also on Paratici's list. He did come very close. We remember it well. Even visas sorted for his family members to come over and everything. There have been big discussions. And then just at the last moment, Paratici just had concerns and did a U-turn over it. Gattuso, we know there was that little brief moment where we all thought, oh, really? And obviously, especially the Spurs fan base really ensured that Levy vetoed that one. Although if you ask Spurs, they'll say, no, it was never going to happen anyway, as they do. And then with Lopetegui, Sevilla president, and see if you recognise the words here, Jose Castro claims Spurs made a dizzying offer to Lopetegui, but he decided to stay. Yes, dizzying. The same words used 14 years ago by the then Sevilla, also again Sevilla, manager Juan de Ramos. So that left Nuno. Paratici had to do a lot of convincing of Levy with Nuno. Like I said before, use those videos of his Valencia team to say, no, he's an attacking guy, honestly. We can have some great football here. So Nuno was hired and then he was fired. 3 months into the season. Great times. That football was not attractive. Sorry, Fabio. You're sold a lie. That was not attractive football. I remember it like I would sometimes wake up in the night sweating, go, oh no, because I remember those horrendous matches. Oh God, the lack of attacking. If you think has been bad under either Mourinho or Conte, no. So yeah, and then obviously Levy decided let's go back for Conte, ignoring everything that they discovered about each other in those talks in the summer. But hey, got them top four. It worked. It did work in that regard in that first season. And the transfer market, Paratici, he's had a few successes. I think you can say that. Definitely that January window, 2022. Kulusevski and Bentancur absolutely transformed the season. Got to give it to him. They were superb. Even myself at the time, I remember being a bit like, oh, he's just gone back to his old club. How unimaginative. They were superb, and hopefully still will be for the long term of Spurs as well. I think Romero, yes, he's got disciplinary issues, but this was the Serie A Defender of the Year. I think the Spurs had a little bit of a free runner in him. I don't think there was too much competition for him, which was surprising. But they got him, they brought him in, and he's now a World Cup winner. I do think once he sorts out the disciplinary side, he's got the potential to be a world-class defender. I do. For the long term at Spurs as well. As he said himself, he's looking to be here for the long term, which I think is good for Spurs. I mean, look, critics could suggest that, yes, all three of those main decent signings, he'd already signed before for Juventus at some point. So, yes, not the most imaginative deals, but all very good players, I think, as well. The other signings, differing impacts, I think, across the last, almost 2 seasons. I think the other thing, I think you probably remember me saying at the time, was one of the criticisms in Italy of Paratici was that he struggled to sell players at Juve and get decent money. I think you could argue that that's what we've seen at Spurs as well since he's come in, although he might also argue that, and I think this is fair to a degree, that Premier League wages are so much higher than a lot of wages across Europe that it is quite difficult to sell players. But hey, other clubs do it, so someone seems to be able to do it. Probably shouldn't give them that excuse, to be honest. The other thing that I think Paratici's obviously had to deal with is the fact of buying club players that fit the profile of the club, and also trying to find ones for Paratici. So, we know the club likes young players that could potentially become stars for the long-term future, whereas Conte, very much, now type players he wants or wanted. Still trying to get used to speaking in the past tense. So, that's why we saw Paratici going out and scouting and bringing in Jed Spence. We saw him leading the push to bring Danjuma from Everton at the last second, as in out of Everton's clutches. Obviously, he's from Villarreal. And Conte just went, oh, thanks for that. Push him to one side. So, yeah, I can understand that's a difficult kind of balancing act as well. And yeah, actually talking about Conte, Paratici and Conte's whole relationship is fascinating. The amount of people that told me that, a little bit like I was saying about how Levy's ever so slightly intimidated people feel of Paratici, a lot of people would say the same about Conte. Conte was very much the dominant person in their relationship. That those two had both worked at Juventus together in the past, but from what I understand, never really, I wouldn't say they were close friends. They would go out for dinner and all this sort of stuff. But towards the end, I think Paratici was really Conte's main ally towards the end. He was the one, fighting his corner. But he was obviously unable to stop that relationship just breaking down entirely towards the end between Conte and the club. And, Paratici's relationship with the club could be on its way to dissolving as well. Just look at the the FIFA ban says that he cannot carry out any football-related activities. It kind of renders it impossible for him to do his job. What's he going to do? I mean, even if he went down to the canteen and started serving up food to the players, technically, he's kind of football-related activities because he is, it's madness. It's absolute madness. I mean, there's been some suggestions. Sorry, a little eyelash has gone in my eye. As you can see, it's aggravating me. There's some suggestions that while he seeks clarification and could potentially appeal that global extension of his ban, that he may still be able to work in the meantime. We haven't heard a definitive answer on that yet or not. But you'd hope Spurs would update us the moment. Apparently, Sammy Mockbell from the Mail has just reported that Paratici is now jetted back into England. It's very much that grainy video you could see was from afar, with a map on the wall as well, which was interesting, just to me probably. It'd be interesting to see where it's now returned apparently to the UK. There you go. I'm just seeing if there's anything new in there that, as Sammy says in that, it's true. Like Conte, Paratici would often go back to Italy during the international breaks. Although, quite interestingly, can he work in Italy? I mean, what are the kind of directives of that ban? I mean, is it only with Italian clubs? I don't know. again, should we be discussing, as in, should this be even something we're discussing about? Should Spurs be connected with someone that's having so many kind of problems around them? They may well say they're sticking by their man and all will be kind of cleared and cleaned up, but it's not a good look. It's really not a good look. It's not. It's not. And the fact is, obviously, he was set to lead the hunt for Conte's successor. Can you do that now? Can you allow that? Is he allowed to do that? Does his ban actually stop him from doing that? Honestly, I just saw that statement on Wednesday night because we kind of had an inkling that something was coming. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of the media expected it to be one of two things. Either he's gone or we're standing by our man and, we want to see how the appeal goes. But it was kind of nothing. It was almost like, you're all horrible, not telling us about these things about this man. How dare you keep this from us? And it's like, well, everyone's known what's going on around him right now, and we're all waiting for the kind of the final resolution of it. But the fact of the matter is he has been banned, and now FIFA have banned him globally. We will see what happens with the appeal, but at this moment in time, these things have happened. That is fact. And now we have the unfortunate scenario tomorrow. I think it's 2:30. The presser, Hotspur way. Stellini in the hot seat of his first press conference as interim head coach, and he finds himself thrown into a situation where the bulk of the questions are going to be about Conte and Paratici. Two men he had no control over whatsoever. It very much reminds me of when they the club threw a 29-year-old Ryan Mason out into a press conference and hid behind him like, go on, you do it. And he had to talk about not only succeeding Mourinho, but the utter farce and mess of the Super League rubbish that Spurs got themselves tied up in or committed to. It's mad. It's mad. It really is. You know what I've been calling for this club's hierarchy just to be more communicative with the fans, just to talk, to have more of a presence, whether that's Daniel Levy or other people on the board. And I think we thought, hey, Paratici's come in, he's going to be that man. And now it's like, no, don't do it, don't put Paratici. Oh, you have. But to be fair, he hasn't actually done it that much. He hasn't really kind of been a big media profile figure. I think we've had one press conference with him, and that was purely because Conte couldn't do it. It was the one where he's ahead of Vitesse when his work permit hadn't come through yet, so he kind of had to do it. And then we've had these kind of very club sanitised, transfer window raps that he does. That's not Paratici laying down some sick beats. That is just him talking about the various transfers. And even the last one, after January window, was a bit like, really? He's just been banned in Italy and you're still shoving him front and centre? We thought that was strange. Then came Tuesday night. Just like, hello. Oh, my goodness. It's mad. It's mad. It's just, this is the club right now, isn't it? Like I say, no men's or women's team manager. A managing director of football who cannot manage or direct football because he's not allowed to. Your star striker, being about to approach his last 12 months of his contract. Fans being unhappy. Spurs back in action at Goodison Park on Monday night. I'll be making my way there, and I'm fully expecting there will be chance, probably against Levy and the board and the owners. And there's so many people just kind of just mystified by some of the decisions that are made and they continue to be made. It just seems like the club's stuck in a loop, isn't it? It's like, let's make this daft decision. Oh, it isn't working. Let's try and fix it. Make another daft decision. Over and over and over again. Appoint, sack, fix, restructure, buy, sell, and repeat until something they're throwing at it eventually sticks on the wall, as it did with Pochettino for 3-4 years in the middle. And the crazy thing is the whole sporting director model is meant to stop upheaval. It's meant to create a scenario where it doesn't matter who the head coach is, because they come in and they operate within the profile of the club. So, like, I did a podcast earlier, and I was talking to our Brighton reporter, Rich Mills, from the company I work for. And, you know, talking to him about Brighton is fascinating because although they're doing it at kind of, I guess, a different scale to Spurs, they're doing it so well, Brighton. They remind me of what Swansea used to be like, and maybe still are. I must admit, I haven't paid too much attention to Swansea recently. Obviously, you see it with Brighton, of just it doesn't matter who the previous coach was, because the next one will be brought into they will be very specifically hired because they tick all the boxes of the way the club wants to play, the way they want to use young players, possession style football, everything. So Potter went to Chelsea, De Zerbi comes in, and actually, rather than there even being any wobbles, he's built on the team. He's been able to have these really solid foundations to build on. And, you know, Richard Mills was saying that all the various categories under Potter, they're now better in. Whether that's, you know, attempts at goal, creativity, expected goals, whatever, all of them now, they're higher up. Spurs are just like the absolute antithesis of this. They just go, just lurch from every extreme to the other, but pointing a completely different manager, then a completely different one. They try a sporting director model, but then kind of doesn't really work, and that person gets bored or they go off. They've gone through just quite a few different sporting directors as well over the years. Sometimes they come away from that model, then they put it back in again. Then people within the structure, like Hitchin did, have kind of ended up getting promoted up to becoming a sporting director, and then they go, oh no, we're going to bring in someone else now. So there's never been an identity to Tottenham. I would love it if Spurs played in the way that Brighton play, but with the attacking threat at the top end of it of a Harry Kane. If Spurs play, I've said this before, I think, if you put Harry Kane in Brighton's team, Brighton might win the league. Honestly, I'd go as far to say that. I know there's variables and injuries and things like that, but that team, bearing in mind Brighton, could easily, they're in the top 4 race. They've got 3 games in hand on Spurs. Stick Harry Kane in there, boom. Honestly, and that's a very, very well-run club. And this is something that Spurs pride themselves on, being a well-run club. Yet on the pitch, honestly, it's just a chaotic, swerving, veering mess most of the time. And they've just, you've heard me say this enough, which makes me chuckle when people are like I did a story that was talking about all this sort of stuff earlier, and someone put underneath, more PR for Spurs. It's like, what? Are you kidding? Have you read it? I'm constantly frustrated with the decisions that are made and the lack of self-awareness and ability from the board, the owners, whatever, just to look at what they're doing and say, okay, we really need to get this right. We really need to build something that is actually stable and has a direction and is something that kind of adheres to the ethos and philosophy of Tottenham Hotspur. Let's make sure we stick to that, and let's not veer away. Let's not panic. Let's not look at kind of glittering, starry people like the Mourinhos and Contes, or even sporting directors like Paratici. Let's stick to this lane that we want to be in, and we'll slowly grow, or maybe slightly slowly grow, but then they're not growing the other way, so it doesn't matter, and progress as a club and progress and build and build and build. And who knows where they could have been if they'd stuck to those ideals. But instead, no. They looked elsewhere, liked what they saw in the shop window, and decided to just do things that didn't fit the club. And this is why Spurs find themselves in this scenario they are right now. They have no identity. Absolute no identity whatsoever. And unfortunately, if Paratici does go, if that appeal is not overturned and he has to step away from his position, someone else will come in and everything he's done will be ripped up and started again. I'd imagine a lot of that structure will be taken apart because of the cluttered nature of it. But you just ask yourself, going back to 2021, should Spurs have brought him in the first place? You know, was all this there, bubbling in the background? Was there more of an inkling, or did they just not know? I don't know. But if they didn't know, should they have done their due diligence? Or could anyone have predicted that this was going to be to where it is? I don't know. To be fair, maybe that is the way. But it's just mad. Honestly, all the finger pointing Spurs do at everyone else, they're just their own worst enemy most of the time. Decisions they make, honestly. I don't know who signs off on a lot of things they do when it comes to PR communication. I don't know who has the final say, where if it is Levy or people on his board, my goodness, they are constantly shooting themselves in the foot. At every turn, they manage to shoot themselves in the foot. It's just mad. Absolutely mad. Right, I'm going to head off now. It was just very much, this was a very much a Paratici themed one. Wanted to talk about various things around this, and hopefully you've got little insights and bits and pieces about kind of Paratici's era, what he's kind of like as a person, what's going on with him right now, and then what it means to the club if he were to suddenly have to step down, I guess, as well. Again, I hope in an ideal world that he doesn't and everything gets cleared and none of this was an issue in the first place and Spurs can say, see, that's why we were sticking with him. We'll see. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff still to be decided. And like I say, 3 different things going on right now and potentially more, I don't know. But Tottenham Hotspur, honestly, it's just a club like no other. They really are. Right, I'm going to head off now. I've got to play football tonight myself. It's 5-a-side night, technically 4-a-side night. Inside a very, very hot indoor pitch that I play on. But I can just take my mind off Spurs for a little while and pretend that I'm as good as Harry Kane up front. So yeah, time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.